Woman of NTL Trust, and today I have our head of the Caribbean sales and real estate, Kamal Nicholson. He is based in Antigua, and we're going to have a great conversation to talk more about the citizenship by investment programs in the Caribbean and the real estate, different properties, different developments in the Caribbean. Kamal, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, Blair. And uh, good evening to all of our viewers as well.
Now, what time is it over there in the Caribbean? Because I noticed the background, it's very dark. Does the sun set quite early in the
Right.
Caribbean?
Yes, the sun would set around 5:30, 6 p.m. Usually. Um, I have a very splendid background, but unfortunately, because the sun has already set, we're not able to view that. So I have the Atlantic Ocean just behind of me. But yeah, the sun has set already, and the evening is on. So we're looking at a very tranquil Caribbean evening. It's usually very quiet, crickets chirping, wonderful nature around. I'm just about to have a cup of coffee as soon as this is over as well. Just to enjoy my evening.
Great. I mean, I was in the Caribbean last year on the ground. I was in Antigua and Barbuda, so I do remember the sun setting quite early. Though during the day, it is absolutely beautiful. Just the views at every angle. It's very nice, and I know people love their coffee. So we're going to talk more about that, about life in the Caribbean, and especially the properties. So we're going to give some people a bit of time to join because there were some technical issues with the other live. For some reason, I was not able to stream, but here we are now. And Kamal, can you tell us more while we wait for some people to join about your role in NTL Trust and overseeing the Caribbean and the properties to help
Sure.
clients who want to go through the CBI path via
Sure.
buying a property?
I'm just gonna give a bit of a backdrop about myself in general. So I'm
Yeah.
from Antigua originally. I went to school there, private school. Went off to study in Moscow when I was 19. Um, the government sent me there. I've worked as soon as I finished my master's degree. I've worked in the Grenada embassy in Russia. This was back in 2017, so this was 10 years ago, and that was how I got into the CIP industry, working
Mhm.
with high net worth clientele from Russia just before the sanctions kicked in. But that was my first taste of the industry, and I haven't looked back since. I've been in the industry since that point. Um, After Moscow, I moved my two young boys to Dubai for schooling. They're there with their mom. Their mom is Russian, and I've just been an avid traveler. London, Moscow, Dubai is where I spend most of my time. Currently, I'm in Antigua, and now we're getting to the original question which Blair would have posed is, to give a bit of a backdrop as to my role in NTL as the regional manager and the head of real estate in NTL. So my task would basically entail covering the entire OECS, the five countries that offer citizenship by investment, which is Antigua, Grenada, St. Kitts, Dominica, and St. Lucia. I cover both the donation and the real estate options. However, as head of real estate, my job primarily is to work with the various real estate projects that we have across the Caribbean. And we're actually developing a super product right now, which I hope we'll get to touch on in this interview, called the Real Estate Hub, which is the first of its kind in this industry. No other company has it. We're developing a tool whereby our investors can scroll through, interact vividly with all the real estate projects in the Caribbean. I'm the one of the developers behind that. We have a huge team who's working on
Okay.
that. And we expect this to be
Sorry to
released.
interrupt. We
So
will
yeah,
definitely get more into that
yeah.
during the call, but I just want to welcome some of those that have said hello, and especially for the replay, share where you're watching from because we are here to answer your questions. Um, Kamal, as again, he's based in Antigua and Barbuda. Let's not forget that, but on the island of Antigua. And we're both working for NTL Trust. Say, since I'm the spokeswoman, I spent some time there last year on the ground. And Kamal, you recently joined the team, but you've been in this industry for some time, correct? So let's just dive into it. Because there's a lot, especially Americans, who want to see what are their options. Why is the Caribbean, do you think, so popular for Americans? And how do you get started if you are considering going down the path for citizenship by investment?
Yeah, Blair, good question. I think right now, the investment immigration industry more than ever before, is going through changes. So, again, even in 2017 when I joined, and in the place that I joined from, which is Russia, you had a bunch of investors just looking to scoop up a passport so they could travel around Europe. They have no clue where the islands were. They had no interest in moving there. And not everybody has an interest in moving to the islands, but I think so far as America is concerned, they've always had a love for the islands. It's in their backyard. It's somewhere that they view as sort of within their sphere of influence. And even in the face of growing populism, I have penned many articles about populism and how it's affecting our industry. Even in the face of growing populism, I think that American investors are looking at the Caribbean as a place that, it's a comfort zone. It's somewhere that is a lovely place to relax. It's a home away from home. And why not own a piece of luxury real estate in the Caribbean? 3 hours away from Miami, a couple hours away from JFK. It's not a far stretch for them. Even Russians, I mean, this is a market I started with, but Russians were willing to, try to figure out the routes just to get somewhere that is warm, you know. And if you talk about warmth, the Caribbean is full of it. The people are still vibrant. The politicians are still very open to, like the foreign direct investment that comes from the citizenship by investment projects. So, I mean, I left Antigua when I was 19. At that point, the CIP program had just been enacted. It was enacted in 2014. I left Antigua. No, 2000.
2019.
Yeah, 2018. So basically, at that since that point, there have been so many projects just springing up all over the island, and people are doing more day by day. Like, so it's really something that has a definite pull. And I think even in the face of populism, even the American government respectfully begins to clamp down on people. That just makes it more of a reason to get out. To travel, to
Well,
have that
thanks.
second plan B option.
Yes. Yeah, so let's start with that. People want a plan B, and we see someone is watching from San Diego, California. Hello, welcome to the call. Um, when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to economy, when it comes to planning your future for your family, what would you say are the differences? Because people ask me when I came back from Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, every island has something different and unique to offer. And since you're Antiguan, can you tell me in our audience, sorry, there's some noise in the background. Is Do you
I'm
hear
not
that
sure.
noise?
There was a slight echo coming from you, but I don't know if
Oh,
because
yeah, no, I don't hear anything.
as soon as you stopped speaking, it phased out.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, we're going to continue on and we'll see how this goes. But just like you, I left the US, but at 24, I went to grad school. And as an American thinking, we're number one, this is the best country in the world, I definitely was transformed when I left the US. For grad school, then I went to teach English. And I was in Thailand, I was in China, I was in Singapore, Kazakhstan, many other places. So for Americans that may have never lived abroad or may have never traveled abroad, how would they start this pathway of citizenship by investment? Because if you've never lived abroad, or even if you may have traveled abroad, it's very different traveling to a country, spending a weekend in a country versus actually living there. Where do people start?
Um, I think the very first step starts with a trip. Um, Obviously, with the Caribbean being in the U.S.'s backyard, taking a cruise or visiting the islands would definitely be a start. I just want to say that here at NTL, we're not in the business of fly by night, like hustle you through the process.
Mhm,
We love for you to take your time. I've had um, interested individuals reach out like a year ago and then they make the decision 2 years after. And I always advise them before you do anything else, uh, come to the islands, take a look, make sure that this is the right place for you to, make your investment and to have the citizenship. That would be the very first step. And then, secondly, making sure that you're working with the right licensed provider. So there are many companies that offer this service. Um, NTL Trust has obviously been on the market since 1994. We've been licensed in all five of the territories that offer this. So when going through your licensed provider, you should ensure that they're licensed, that they're efficient, that they provide proper service. So make sure that you're picking professionals to work with. And then thirdly, obviously after knowing your island, knowing your service provider, you would want to
mhm,
ensure that you zoom in on the actual, product that you're looking for, which is where I come in as regional
mhm.
manager. In terms of the real estate hub, I will assist you in finding the right project that works for you. Um, in the Caribbean, we have a lot of real estate projects that are CIP approved and I will help you. Not just myself, NTL Trust, myself, the team will assist you in picking the right product that fits you. Um, Varying products, some with varying levels of ROI. So it's very important for you to work with professionals in
Mhm.
that aspect, and we definitely assist you where that is
Now,
concerned.
talking about professionals, sorry to interrupt, because a lot of people go on YouTube, they see a lot of influencers, they see a lot of companies say, hey, this is what's happening in the world. This is what you should do. How can people kind of cut through the noise to pick the right team or agency to work with? I mean, I love NTL Trust, being on the ground and seeing for myself, despite living abroad for over a decade. Being an expat is very different than actually making that move to acquire a second citizenship. It's very different, to buy a property abroad as a foreigner where you eventually get citizenship. So, how do you think NTL Trust stands alone in the industry of investment migration?
For several reasons. I mean, the first being that we've been in the industry since 1994, so that is
Mhm,
quite some time. If you know the
mhm,
history of CIP, you know that the first Caribbean program was enacted in the 1980s. This would have been the St. Kitts government, but most Caribbean governments were still fiddling with the idea of having a CIP in 1994. So we've been around uh, in terms of providing trust services from the inception, and then we've now branched out into the CIP and expanding further into real estate, which I think, as I've said at several uh, industry conferences, that the industry is indeed transforming from citizenship by investment into residency and citizenship by investment, so that just offering a travel document is long gone. Governments are concerned now about who they're letting in, who's getting the passport. They need to see tangible results. Are we just giving somebody a passport, or are they actually coming to the island once a year and like spending and pumping money into the economy? And so the era of citizenship by investment is dead. Residency and citizenship by investment is now here, and NTL Trust is adapting further into that sphere so that we could provide top-notch services for our clients.
Excellent. And I agree when I was hired as a spokeswoman, we're in a digital age where, yes, you can be a company in business for a long time, but how do people find, before YouTube, how did people find these citizenship by investment programs? Were they finding it through word of mouth? Like, what was it like for you in Russia when you were in the industry?
Yeah, well, new YouTube, Instagram, these are fairly new models of promoting the CIP. I think this is all new school, so to speak, types of engines. The first colleague who I remember actively, promoting things via YouTube and Instagram was a gentleman by the name of Anatoly Litaev. They had a company called Migronis. I actually worked there for a bit before, obviously, after the embassy and then transitioning to NTL Trust. But he was the first one who I really saw actively promoting the product via Instagram and YouTube. Everybody's like, "What's this dude up to?" Um, I think for some people who are old school and quite wealthy, this is quite low. They don't want the attention. Um, but obviously, the technology is changing, and I think adapting is very important. I think with the era of RCBI and sales, I think that options such as YouTube and Instagram are definitely key variants in terms of promoting the product. But you won't find guys from the 1990s who like the Instagram model too much. They prefer to be in the background somewhere in the island sipping a cup of tea and like sending pigeons across the world with with their notes. Yeah, Instagram is definitely Instagram, YouTube are definitely emerging as new tools, and I think it's because I think it's important because it's transforming the industry. So people, you know, had this sort of conception that this is some sort of shady business, like trust with people who don't have an understanding of it, and
Mhm.
it's some type of when you publicize the product and put it out there, it draws awareness to it. And I think people are actually now beginning to pay attention to CBI and RCBI and be like, oh no, this isn't some shady governmenty crooked type of thing. These are actually nice people, and like salespeople. So it's changing the face of the industry as well, and I think it's good. I think it's good, and um, I think it's good that NTL is, NTL Trust is branching out into that sphere as well. Having a spokesperson and venturing into like promoting the product in this fashion.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Especially aside from YouTube and Instagram, when I was on the ground, for example, in Grenada, they have a whole citizenship by investment unit, and that their website, because the governments, each of the islands do have their own website. So for people that might be skeptical, be like, is this something real? Am I get scammed? Like they're unfamiliar with that. Because when I returned back from my trip, people are like, is this a really thing? People are investing to buy second citizenships. Aside from social media, each island has their own unit, correct? They have the websites where you can look up all this information. And of course, having a licensed marketing agency like NTL Trust to guide you through this whole process, because it can take a couple of months. If you can talk about that, once you just make that trip, because we always tell people go on the ground, see the island for yourself. I saw all five of them, and it's kind of hard to distinguish which one I like the most, which one would I choose. I tell clients, like, look, it depends on your family size, it depends on your lifestyle. But when it comes to the timeline, if you can talk more to us and people in the future that are curious about this, what is the average timeline for clients, that say want to get um, a, uh, go to Antigua
Um,
and get their
yeah,
CPI Antigua?
yeah, this is a good question. Now, as per the law, and
Yeah.
it's always important to have the legal aspect. As per the law, it should not be going for more than 4 months, because the act states that the decision should be made. I'm speaking as for Antigua and some of the other territories I'm familiar with. The act actually states that this is a 4 month process. However, since we're dealing with an actual physical process and human error, etc., like what they say in Russian, "Человеческий factor," because I speak a bit of Russian. Um, uh, Sometimes the process can take up to a year, to be honest. I mean, if there's a backlog, if there's like a huge surplus of applicants, anything between 6 months to a year. I would say the median, it would be around 8 months at max. If it's a tough case, it goes to a year. It's a good case, it finishes at around 4 to 6 months. When I say good case, I mean easygoing, no issues back and forth in between the units and the client or the service provider. Typically, units don't speak to clients; they speak to service providers who then speak to the client. But if it's an easygoing case, 4 months. If it's a tough case or there's a war going on and outside influences exerting pressure. Um, for instance, with the Russian backlog in 2021, 2022, many applicants are being processed for around a year.
Oh, wow,
Um,
a year.
and then with the price, with the new ECC IRA coming into play, with price increases and like attempts at bigger due diligence, um, there was a spike. There was a spike in product in 2000. Well, that was just like a year and a half ago. So there's a spike in product because people were rushing to catch the original prices before they increased. So
Okay.
Antigua has a huge backlog and things are taking like around 1 year, but it will get back to normal, which is why I say on average, median, to be fair and honest to a client, 8 months. However, the act does state that it should be 4 months and units actively try
Okay.
to work towards that.
Sounds good. And for those that are just joining our call, please leave a thumbs up. This helps push the video so more viewers can watch this. And feel free to ask questions below because we are here to answer your questions. Now, before we get into properties, can you just briefly share what are the different avenues when it comes to citizenship by investment? Quickly.
Okay, so yeah, there's very many different vehicles, and it's actually one of my favorite topics 'cause it's just like this, like you can get into like all the different engines and vehicles, but primarily the two engines for that serve as a vehicle for investment would be donation into the country without a direct return on investment. So typically, just invest and get a passport in return, and investment into accredited. Very important to state accredited. It's just not you come to the island, buy a hut, and get the passport. But you invest into an accredited hotel project, which is important. You should check with your licensed service provider to ensure that the real estate that you're buying is accredited under CIP, and thereabouts one does also qualify for citizenship by investment. But separate and apart from those two main mechanisms, there does exist other routes. For instance, one can make a significant donation or investment into business in the country for upwards of $1 million, and thereby
But for which
receive.
island is that? Sorry to interrupt, but for which island? Because each island, I know there's sometimes for in St. Lucia, there's the government bonds
Right.
and
So
there's the
yeah.
one about the business. So
Right, and
be more specific?
the government bond is not even the significant investment option that I'm talking about. That's different. So I will touch on bonds in a sec. But for instance, in Antigua, if you invest by law upwards of $1 million uh, with partners, it could be a group, a consortium of investors as well. They can also qualify for the citizenship by investment, or the bonds, as you mentioned. Antigua doesn't have a bond option. St. Lucia is famous for that bond option.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's another mechanism whereby one can get the citizenship through investment. So, we've already, in synopsis, touched on like four or five mechanisms.
What about
But
the
my
shareholders as well? Because sorry to interrupt, St. Kitts and
Right,
Nevis and also Dominica, because I will get into the properties. Some of the properties you can be a shareholder, for example, the Intercontinental in Dominica, the Park Hyatt in St. Kitts,
correct.
and the Marriott Hotel International in St. Kitts. So there's those options. Can you talk more about
Correct.
that?
Correct. These are, well, this is still falls under the real estate option. To be honest, if yeah, I think you're referring to the timeshare investment.
Yes.
And these are range development products. So range development is obviously one of the biggest developers in the Eastern Caribbean, and as Blair kindly noted, they have developed uh, several high-end luxury products in the Caribbean, such as the
And I had to sit down
Tamarind.
and interview with them. So yes, that's why I was
Right.
asking.
Right. So the timeshare option is basically an option whereby, obviously, as the name suggests, you're not making a full purchase of a unit or of a apartment or the hotel number. You're investing and receiving in timeshare, which gives you an ROI of typically 2 to 5%. per annum, and the timeshare can be sold after 5 years. You keep the citizenship. The person buying the share also gets the citizenship. The share allows you to visit. Um, you could stay in your unit, etc. You have that ownership. Some of the share sellers give a buyback option. Um, and this is an actually liquid situation because sometimes developers offer shares and they stop doing it. But typically, range development doesn't do an outright buyback of shares. I can speak for range developments, say that they typically don't do that, but there are developers who buy back shares, etc. Um, but yeah, the timeshare option is a very popular option now. As a matter of fact, I think it's the most solid proposal for the Caribbean since most people don't want to live there year round.
Mhm.
They would like to just visit from time to time. So having a timeshare in St. Kitts or Antigua is it's perfect. You come to the island, you spend a couple of weeks, and then after 5 years, you sell the share to a buddy of yours who can also get the citizenship. Perfect.
Yeah, sounds great. So far we got the government donation, then we have the timeshares, then which is part of the real estate option. But again, each island varies, as you said. Not everyone has. I don't think all 5 islands have the timeshare, and not all islands have the government bonds, and not all islands have. You can either go with a business partner or a consortium to set up a
Right.
company.
So
So can you
Antigua
just
has
go?
the
Yeah.
right. So Antigua has the business consortium option. Antigua does not actively promote the timeshare option. The timeshare option is actually largely pushed and developed by Range Developments.
Okay.
They're the ones that spread it. Unfortunately, they were not able to enter the Antiguan market, so they've built in all of the 4 islands, which is why the timeshare option is not so popular in Antigua. However, this doesn't mean that there's not that option in Antigua. There's some hotels in Antigua that offer this, and I mean, this requires a whole separate interview, so I'm not going to call any names
Yes.
right
Yeah.
now.
We
But
won't have to get into
suffice
details,
it
but
to
just
say
the
that you
overall
can get a
options.
timeshare. Suffice it to say, you can get a timeshare option with Antigua. However, it's not going to be from range developers. It's going to be another hotel development. The bond option largely only available in Saint Lucia, so that is something that the other islands don't have. They don't offer people the bond investment. So depending on what you're looking for as an investor, we again, as I said, after looking at the island, deciding which island you like, coming to a service provider such as NTL Trust. Um, the third option is then to pick the program that suits you best, right? So St. Lucia is that program, or Antigua, and some people make choices based on obviously their preference. So it's not that they prefer Antigua over St. Lucia. For them, it's pretty much the same thing. But you know, f- they may choose St. Lucia just because they want to invest in the government bonds, and because Antigua
Okay.
doesn't have it. So we have a wide variety of products available for all of our clients, and we're happy to sit down with you and provide you with the right product.
Great. So let's talk about these wide products because when I was on the ground there, for example, in Antigua, I stayed at the Hodges Bay, West Indies, which is a beautiful, beautiful property that has a nearby private island where it's like a 10-minute boat ride. I also viewed and did a property tour of Tamarind Hills. Then I went to Passion Village, which is owned by these Italians. There's apparently a lot of Italians in Antigua. So yeah, let's go island by island, property by property, because there are a lot of options. And with our agency, NTL Trust, again, uh, we don't want to overwhelm people with saying, you have hundreds of options, because having too many options is not good. So what do you see when it comes to clients that choose Antigua and Barbuda? And like, what are some of the popular properties that they
Right. So for
choose?
Antigua and Barbuda, the most popular property slash product would be Hodges Bay. Hodges Bay Club. It's very popular with everyone. It's beautiful. It's super luxury interior. South Point, another very beautiful high end luxury. resort in English Harbor in Antigua. I would say Hodges Bay South Point within your top two, but several new top class products coming into play. Um, and as the head of real estate, I'm just always so excited. Anytime I see something new
Mhm.
coming up. So we have new projects coming in as well. Some like located on private islands that require helicopter service
Oh,
to get there, etc. Um, for Antigua, I would say that Tamarind Hills is a super luxury as well, closed resort, gated, where some of the world's wealthiest people, have timeshare ownership or have outright bought units as well. Not far from Tamarind Hills, as Blair noted, there's Passion Village, and there's also not Tamarind Hills, Sugar Ridge. So Sugar
okay. I didn't
Ridge,
have time to go to Sugar Ridge because as small as Antigua is, you have these neighborhoods like English Harbor or Sugar Ridge, and they're like on the opposite sides. And it takes at
yeah,
least like
Sugar
40
Ridge is just
minutes to get
across the
from one
street.
side to the other. So I know
Well, no,
also that English,
Jolly Harbor is just across the street
sorry,
from.
Jolly Harbor. I was thinking Jolly Harbor,
Yeah.
so it's been some
Jolly
time. But
Harbor is just
Jolly
across.
Harbor, from my understanding, there's going to be there's some Canadian developers and American developers that are completely tore down buildings and completely redeveloping the whole entire area. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, not torn down the whole buildings. Jolly Harbor as
Okay.
a community is well known as one of the most luxury communities in Antigua that have been on the market since the 80s. Was developed by a luxury Italian developer, but it's just
Mm.
going through a phase of redevelopment. So no,
Okay, redevelopment.
it's not
Sorry,
great. It's not
redevelopment.
like
There's a
you're
lot of
tearing down.
redevelopment
Right.
in
So
that
there's a
area.
lot of beachfront property that
Mhm.
was old, derelict, that under the auspices of the present current Antigua government, the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, Prime Minister Gaston Brown, they have opted to redevelop those properties. So, for instance, pushing down some of the old restaurants, people haggling on the beach, etc. Unsightly, derelict things. They're pushing those down, and in the space of that, they're building, the Nikki Beach. For instance, that's one of the new projects that are coming that I'm very super excited about. I know Barbados has a Nikki Beach, or had a Nikki Beach, but Antigua is doing a Nikki Beach as well. And our Nikki
Okay.
Beach, I say our as an Antiguan, but the Antigua Nikki Beach is going to be slightly different from the Bajan one, the one that was in Barbados, in that it's going to be a bit more exclusive. So Barbados tried its hand with it. I think they actually closed it, but we
Oh,
sort of examined their mistakes, and we're making this a CIP project as well. So that's the first thing. So people who invest into these rooms are also going to be able to get the Antiguan citizenship by investment, and um,
and
you know,
Antigua has many beaches. There's
and
what,
Antigua,
365 beaches, one beach for
right?
every day of the
Beach,
year. Don't forget about that.
yeah, Antigua has many beaches, but this one is going to be overlooking, that lovely a beachfront area in Jolly Harbor in Antigua. It's going to be within the community of Jolly Harbor as well. So next to all of the amenities, the luxury shops, the luxury restaurants, etc. It's really going to be something amazing.
Okay,
They've
that's great.
yeah,
But they
they've
have also a
already
private harbor, correct? Because I remember if you have a boat, we need to talk about people that own yachts, whether it's a small yacht or a big yacht. What are some of the benefits, especially if you're gonna dock your boat in Antigua for yacht owners?
the benefits for docking your boat in Antigua is obviously uh, finding a safe environment. That has a history, a tradition of yacht keeping. So they've been in this industry for years. As I said, the community was developed in the 80s. It used to be swamp and mangrove lands, and they redeveloped it into this amazing community. And
Okay.
so their expertise is, the yacht keeping, etc. And proximity to the U.S., for instance, for yachtsmen, proximity. Um, well, it's a very first of all, it's very good harbor. So people sailing in from across Europe, for instance, on the yachts. It's one of the first destinations that they go to. So Jolly Harbor, English Harbor, these are prime points for like the dockings, etc. But
Mm.
Jolly Harbor obviously has a huge infrastructure for that. But I want to say that the bigger yachts typically dock in English Harbor because
Ah,
it has
okay.
it's been well, English Harbor, if you know the history of Antigua, was actually developed when the islands were under the British as a naval port. Lord Admiral Horatio Nelson, and there's a monument to him there as well. So instead of yachts at that time, the British Navy,
Okay, so they're used to
in
having the
right.
size of
So
Navy ships
the Caribbean,
dock
this is
at
actually
that
what
harbor.
this is actually what the Caribbean is about, right? So we have
Mhm.
vessels registered from all over the world in our harbors, in our yachts, etc. In prime locations. So the Caribbean is actually famous for that.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
in terms of
Um,
top-notch service, they will find it here.
so what about education? So for families that have children, it's specifically for Antigua, because our next subject we'll talk about Grenada. What about any benefits if you get the citizenship and you send your children to university to study? What are some of those benefits?
Right. So, in terms of the educational system in Antigua, um, obviously heavily based on the British curriculum. Um, as you know, Antigua is still a Commonwealth country with the head of state
Oh,
being
I didn't know that. I
um,
didn't know it was still part
right.
of the British Commonwealth.
Right, separate and apart from being in the Commonwealth, because several countries have left the Commonwealth decades ago. But the head of state of Antigua is still currently the British monarch. So at present, that is King Charles. So the education system is heavily tied into the British system. So you're getting a good, solid base education
But
that
what about for
can
universities, though? Do they have a program similar like St. George's University in
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'd like
Grenada?
to go deeper, but thank you for putting me
Yeah,
back on point.
let's
Yeah.
focus because we don't have.
In terms of the universities, so in Grenada, there's the St. George's University, as you mentioned, which is one of the world's best medical universities, offering people admission into the U.S. Medical system. I think around
Yeah.
70 to 80% of the graduates go on to work in the U.S. Antigua has exactly the same thing, but they're just a bit more private. We have the American University of Antigua. It's called AUA.
Oh, really?
Right.
AUA. Okay.
It's like 10 minutes from where I live. The next
Oh,
time we do
okay.
a live, I'm going to probably do it from AUA, in some other places just to show
Yeah, we
people.
could do a live during the day so people can
It
see
is
the
the
beauty of
exact
Antigua.
it is the exact analog of St. George's University. And people who study there can also gain admission into top level American or British hospitals. Find work there. So I mean, these are top level
So they're
universities.
accredited in the US and the UK.
Correct. Correct.
Okay,
Accredited
so
in
if
the U.S.
families want to have their children study, is there any scholarship? Do they get a discount if they go through Antigua Citizenship by Investment Program and
Right. So
sending their
as an
children to
Antiguan,
study?
yes, there this preferential. We don't say discount because it sounds tacky in terms of education, but there are preferential rates for locals, people
Okay,
who are Antiguan citizens, etc. Preferential rates in terms of like living, studying, working, etc. In the
okay,
country, there are lots of preferential rates for them. So
okay.
yeah, it's yeah. I mean,
Okay, so in Grenada, as we stated, I was on the ground in Grenada and I did a tour of St. George's University. We'll have a YouTube video of that coming out soon. But as Kamal said, that is a university that educates a lot of American doctors. It's accredited in the US, I think also in the UK. I'm not sure if it's in the UK, maybe the veterinarian or the business school, but
the business
primarily
school,
in the
but
US.
primarily in the U.S. Correct. And
Primarily in
AUA
the
is the
US.
just so you know, AUA is the exact analog, but the Antiguans never
There, you
boast
guys
about it.
are quiet about it. You're not like St. George's University.
Antiguans don't like, they just like to, just
Okay,
with you.
okay, okay. Okay, so let's go to properties in Grenada because in Grenada you have a lot of beautiful properties. Across the street from St. George's University, you have um, Hidden Bay, I believe. I went as tour. So if people say, "Hey, I don't have 200 or $500,000 to spend, I want something smaller," that would be the perfect because the off-campus dorms are always full. It's a nice, ROI on your investment. And I'm not sure if they're even taking any new applicants because it's pretty much a hot commodity. Aside from it's Hideaway. There's a Silver Sands Grand Anse Hotel, which has the longest infinity pool in the Caribbean. Very beautiful property, and I believe they're part of the timeshares. Like you can own a piece of the
Correct. For
hotel.
Silver Sands, you can own the timeshare as well. It's developed by
Yes,
Mr. Najib Sawaris, yeah, who's a
yes.
billionaire Egyptian developer. Amazing piece
Yeah, so I did a
of
tour,
property
and you can see some of
he
our
built.
shorts there. And then
Yeah,
they
the
have
longest
this the
infinity pool
Silver
in the
Sands.
longest infinity pool in the Eastern Caribbean.
Yes. You have the Silver Sands Beach Hotel because there's two properties part of the Silver Sands. That is one I was on the ground for both properties to see just the villas, the penthouse at the Grand Anse Hotel. I swam in that pool. So can you tell us more about the property developments in Grenada?
Sure. So Grenada is one of my favorite islands, to be honest, as it relates to CIP, CBI, because they're sort of like, if you rank the islands, so the Bible says in every great house there are vessels, like of different levels. So within the CIP world there's also rankings, and I think Grenada presently is maybe number one for several reasons. They have a lot of developments. They're also, I would say, the de facto headquarters of the Caribbean CIP. They've rebranded their Citizenship by Investment Unit from a Citizenship by Investment Unit into an investment migration agency, which is something I've advocated for forever, because citizenship by investment is dead. It's just like, okay, give me the passport, you never show up. Investment migration is a much better term, or residency and citizenship by
But
investment.
can we focus on the properties?
The properties, amazing properties, starting from the Six Senses. You've been already, as you said, to
The
Najib's
Silver Sands, but tell
place.
our audience and people more about the Silver Sands because we have a partnership with the Silver Sands hotels.
Right. So the Silver Sands was developed by Egyptian developer Najib Sawaris. It is one of the newest properties developed in Grenada. It has the longest infinity pool in the Eastern Caribbean. Blair was there; she can attest to it. I was there also several years ago. Um, so it's also available under the timeshare ownership as well. So investors invest, they get a 2 to 5 ROI on their investment, which they can also sell after a 5-year period as well. And it's really, it's one of the most beautiful properties on the island, separate and apart from the Silver Sands. There is
The beach
Intercontinental.
house. Yeah, the
Yeah,
beach house.
there's the Intercontinental from Range Developments, the Six Senses, there's Marriott. There are private islands such as Calavini Island that have CIP projects as them on them as well. So several projects really available there.
Yes, and from what I understand, I've interviewed some other expats and foreigners living on the island. Apparently, the family life in Grenada is amazing. It's safe. If you go to the beach, people are not going to take your belongings. You can leave your cell phone. You can leave things out and to enjoy the water. Um, as you said, the investment migration unit. I was able to talk to the deputy for the CIU unit. Very interesting lady, and they have a great website that has an AI chat bot. So if you go on to just type in Google like see Citizenship by Investment Grenada, that's the first website that comes up. And open the website, you have this nice chat bot. I mean, they're very, very tech savvy. And I know, and we can talk more about how, aside from social media, the government, they do send, for these fairs or for these talks, they do send people from the islands just to, kind of promote this to the world. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. In terms of the, you mentioned the unit. Um, as I said, they've rebranded from the unit to IMA. It's headed by Mr. Thomas Anthony, who's an industry veteran and has done a lot in promoting promoting Grenada as a very luxury development. Um, the Grenadian program really just came into effect in 2014, but it was there prior to that in earlier phases, but it's really only taken
Mhm.
wing in 2014, and they've done a tremendous job in terms of promoting it all across the world. And at this point, I would say that they're the de facto capital of citizenship by investment in the Eastern Caribbean. Um, as you know, the Grenadian citizenship by investment mechanism allows the holders of a Grenadian passport to obtain an E2 visa with the US. So it's the
Okay,
only
so that's,
island.
yeah,
Right.
that's
So it's the
amazing.
only island. This is another reason that why the Grenadian program has become premium, so to speak, because a lot of people who get the Grenadian passport or Caribbean passport are looking for options that allow them some sort of access uh, into America or into the US. So the E2 status is really something that has placed Grenada in a premium class so far as the citizenship by investment
Okay,
program is
great.
concerned.
Great. So we have a lot more to talk about, but we'll end here because there's many other islands and we want to do more of these weekly lives. So for those that are watching, please leave a thumbs up, leave your comment below. For those that watch in the future in the replay, thank you. Subscribe, ask your questions. We are here to help you and see some of our videos on YouTube because we have made for Sao Tome and Principe. I was there last September and on the ground when they launched the new Citizenship by Investment program. Uh, and we want to have more of these conversations, talk about the property, the options, what's good if you're for families, for singles. If you, it's important for you to go to the US or even to the EU. We didn't touch on that point, like having a passport from the Caribbean, you at least have maybe 90 days to go into the EU. Because when I came back to Serbia and people were asking, okay, well, the Caribbean's far, the EU's right there, like what are the benefits? So we'll go more detail and talk about the other islands like St. Lucia, which is having a really big development project called Alia. I was able to sit down with the developer and the head architect, and it was really exciting to go on those sites. I think in April they're going to open phase one. What's really special about that property is they'll have a mall, they'll have luxury hotels and condos. They'll also have a medical facility that will be the first in the Caribbean that will provide hair transplant removal, other cosmetic procedures. So, this conversation we're going to continue to have weekly, and we invite you all to follow us and to share and to leave your comments below because NTL Trust has been in this business since 1994. As Kamal said, for those that are very traditional, for those that value discretion and maybe not want to get all their news from social media, we do have a team to help you and your family to go through this process. So thank you so much, Kamal, for talking and sharing more insight with our audience.
Thank
And
you.
we will see you next week.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it. And to the viewers, always remember you can reach out to us. NTL Trust will provide you with top-notch service.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.